Hi everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I'm really glad to have you here, and I hope you're having a great day. I'm really happy to finally be doing this because it actually took me 5 years to get started with this podcast, and it was a journey filled with trial and error, and I feel like I finally got to a point where my vision is a bit clearer. But if you are in a place in your life where you feel like you're trying to figure out what you could do in your life that brings you purpose, brings you fulfillment, but haven't really figured out yet what that would look like, then this video is definitely for you because I have been there. Sometimes I still feel like I am there. And so I just wanted to share what I learned in this 5-year journey about finding your gift, finding your talent, and starting to work on a purposeful and fulfilled life. So honestly, up until I graduated from uni, finding my gift or my talent wasn't really something that came up in my mind. It wasn't something that I was ever really taught. I was always taught, study, go well in school, and get a good job, basically. I think many of us were probably taught that narrative. But once I graduated from law school, it was a bit of a turning point for me. I remember that summer I started looking for a job, and the weeks went by and I still couldn't find anything, and I started feeling frustrated, I remember, because I realized at some point that my life felt useless. It felt like I had no purpose in my life. I wasn't doing anything useful. And for me, I'm a very objective, goal-driven person. So it was very hard for me to endure that period of feeling like my life had no use and no purpose. But the problem was that even when I started looking for different jobs, I still wasn't excited. I didn't feel motivated to find a job in that particular field. And this is what worried me more as well, because I thought, well, I'm just starting my career. How can I feel like this? That's when I started listening to a lot of motivational speakers. I started listening to speakers like Miles Monroe, Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins, all of them, every morning. I would make a point that I would listen to them for at least half an hour or even more during the day. And something amazing happened actually, because slowly I started believing that I was actually meant for more. There's nothing wrong with looking for a job, and I think there's plenty of great jobs that you can find. But a lot of times I feel like many people stay trapped in that idea of that one job is the only thing they can do for the rest of their life. And I think that's what makes us often feel trapped. And when I started listening to their motivational speeches, I actually started realizing, you know what, there's probably something more. There's more I can do. There's more I can offer to this world. And so I started this journey of trying to find my gift. And it's very funny because initially I thought, I'm just gonna ask God what his gift is, what his talent is that he put inside me, and then I'm just gonna make a plan and start working on it. It sounded very simple and also very naive, and obviously that's not how it went. So one of the first mistakes I made was thinking that it was going to be an answer. I thought that I would just find the answer to what my gift or my talent was that I should bring forward in this life, or what God's purpose for my life was. But I realized very early on that it wouldn't have been like that, obviously. So if you are at that point in your life where you've discovered and finally understood that you are special, you are unique, there's a special gift or talent that God has placed within you, and that you have that responsibility to carry out and bring it to the world, but you don't really know where to start with, I just want to encourage you and prepare you, anticipate that it's going to be a journey. It is not going to be an answer. It's very unlikely that you will just one day have this light bulb moment and realize what it is. I mean, maybe it happens like that, but to me it definitely didn't, and I know for a lot of people it's the same, because as human beings we grow a lot, we evolve. We tend to have this misconception that we are static and we remain the same, or that our interests and passions remain the same, but that's actually not the case. And the more you grow, the more your vision will evolve, and the more God will guide and direct your steps to show how he wants to use you and what's the gift he's placed in your life. So if you expect an actual answer or a simple, straightforward answer, then I would suggest to remove that expectation, because a lot of times then we have that expectation, and when it doesn't happen it just frustrates us and it makes the journey more difficult. So just accept that it's a journey. It's a journey to discovering what your gift is. It's a journey to discover what God's purpose for your life is and how he wants to use you, and it's gonna take some time, and that's okay, because God uses that process to work on us. If I look back at these 5 years, I've been able to make a lot of growth because God has worked in me during these years that I wouldn't have been able to grow like this otherwise if I had just gotten the answer at the beginning. Another thing I learned was understanding that your passion is not necessarily your calling or your gift. We are often told by society to find our passion and start working on that, and that's how we will live a fulfilled life. But I've found that that's not actually true. What I've personally discovered is that your passion does not necessarily bring you purpose. First of all, like I said before, we continuously grow and evolve, so our passions change over time. And also, our passions do not necessarily give us purpose. There might be some passions that feel like they give you purpose, but other passions might not give you purpose. Something that gives you purpose might also be your passion, but something that is your passion doesn't necessarily give you purpose as well. I'll give you an example. I have practiced competitive figure skating for 11 years when I was younger, and it is definitely one of my passions. It is still nowadays. I still love it. I miss it sometimes. I get emotional when I watch competitions, and so I would really say that it is one of my passions, but I wouldn't say that it gives me purpose. It's something that I enjoy doing. I enjoy watching competitions. I look back at the memories with happiness and nostalgia sometimes, but it doesn't give me purpose. It doesn't make my life feel fulfilled when I do it. And I guess that's the difference. Probably all of us have multiple gifts or talents, but it doesn't mean that all of those gifts or talents are the ones that give us purpose. And it doesn't mean God wants to use all of those gifts or talents in our life. He might have prepared to use different gifts or talents in different periods of our life. And that's also something that we need to get used to, because I think for me as well, one of the mistakes I made was thinking that it was going to be very static. I just find my gifts, I find my talent, I start working on it, and then I bring it to life. But that's not really how it works in reality, because life is a process of growing and a process of developing the vision that God has for our life and bringing it to pass. It is a journey. It takes time. It takes trial and error. It takes making mistakes and going back, It takes learning and growing in our character and in our faith, and especially in our relationship with God. What I've realized over time as well is that many times the gifts and talents that God wants to use us with, or that He's placed in our life as part of His plan, are the ones that we often tend to overlook, maybe because we kind of give it for granted. We think that everyone else has those same things, and also they might go overlooked because we are already using them in our day-to-day life. I've noticed that a lot of times it is really helpful to ask ourselves, how do I enjoy helping other people? What gives me fulfillment when I'm helping other people? And also, how do I think God wants to use me to help other people? Because I think another misconception of when we are focused on finding our passion instead of discovering our gift is that our passion is about ourselves, but the gift God gave us is to help others. It's for the benefit of others. And I think in today's society as well, we forgot how important helping others is for us. We think that we need to be our focus all the time and just thinking about self-care, self-improvement and all of this. And I have nothing against it. But if we become our sole constant focus, then actually that is going to drain fulfillment away from our life. Because as human beings, we actually feel fulfilled when we are helping other people. And so a lot of times, instead of focusing on how can I find my passion, what is my passion, what do I like doing, what do I enjoy, it's a lot better to ask ourselves, how do I like helping other people? What comes easy to me that is helpful for other people? How do I think God wants to use me to help other people? And this is a very small shift maybe, but I think it helps a lot to shift our focus from us to being of service to other people. And a lot of times I think this is one of the best ways to start discovering what our gifts and God's purpose for our life is. And I think this is a very important point as well, because we are told to go and find our passion as if it's something that is outside of us. But the gift God has placed is already within us. So it's not a matter of going outside and finding it. It's a matter of looking inside and discovering it. And many times I think even as we grow up, our gifts tend to get buried under the expectations that society has of what our life should look like, or the expectations we have for ourselves or what we should be doing. And so when that happens, our gifts or our talents that are natural, that God has already placed within us, get buried under levels and levels and layers of expectations and what other people think, what we think, what we've been conditioned to think and expect of ourselves. So a lot of times, instead of it being something that is outward looking on the outside, trying to find what our passion is, it's something that it requires us to look inwards and unpeel those layers that have kind of formed over time and ended up bearing our gifts. In my personal experience, I was able to start figuring out better what gave me purpose during one of the most difficult seasons in my life, because I spontaneously started writing. And I realized that when I started writing, my intention behind it was because I wanted to share what I was learning to help other people. Up until that point, I always thought that because I loved singing, and I've always loved singing, and I'm really passionate about it, I enjoy it, I'm pretty good at it, I always thought, oh, this is probably how God wants to use me. But when I started writing, I realized that singing is one of my passions, and it might be one of the gifts God has given me, but it's not something I feel I would use to help other people, because singing primarily makes me feel better. It helps me process my emotions. It helps me feel free. It helps me release negative emotions. But when I started writing, my intention behind it was completely different. My intention was outwards, towards other people. It was, I want to help other people who are going through the same thing. And that's when I realized how important our motivation behind the gift or talent we have is, because our motivation should be that of building a fulfilled life that is centered around using God's gift to the benefit of other people, or to help other people, to support other people, to encourage other people. There's another thing I learned in my journey of trying to build a purposeful life, trying to discover my gift, and that is not letting our ambition cloud our judgment. God should always be in the lead. When we embark on this journey of trying to find our gift, discover our gift, our talent, finding out what is God's purpose for our life, we embark on this journey with God. We ask Him to lead us, we ask Him to guide our steps. And so we shouldn't really, at some point of the journey, decide to do things our own way. I think it's something that might happen when we start understanding a little bit better what God's vision for our life is, and then we decide to take it into our own hands and do it our own way. And a lot of times we might not even realize that we are doing it. Honestly, it happened to me as well when I finally started having a clearer vision of what to do in my life that was going to bring me purpose and fulfillment, and that could be to God's glory. But that I realized that after a while, even though I started that journey with God, at some point on the way I had left Him behind and started doing things my own way. And a lot of times it's a shift that can happen without us really even noticing. So something that is very important in this situation is making sure that you are always making your decisions with God. You are always letting Him guide your steps, because when you ask Him for guidance and when you ask Him to lead you, He is going to lead you even when you start going astray. So in my case, for example, I always ask God to lead my steps, to guide me, to show me where to go, what to do. And even when for one reason or another I had started making my own decisions, which by the way, at that point in time, I hadn't immediately clocked that I had started doing things on my own, God still called me back, because my heart and my mind were still open to hearing from God. And when I started doing things my own way, I didn't realize immediately that I had started doing things how I wanted to do them or how I thought that they should be done, but something felt off. And so if you've always asked God to lead you and guide you, but then as you go along in the process, you start feeling that the choices you're making feel a bit off, or maybe what you're trying to do doesn't really align with your spirit, then sometimes this might be God trying to tell you, listen, you are making steps on your own and you have left me behind. So I think it's really important to always go back to Him, always make sure that you are aligned with His will, His purpose for your life. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. I think sometimes we kind of mysticize this whole thing of, oh, God needs to be the one leading our every step. But this doesn't mean that you can't make any decisions, because He's also given you the wisdom to make decisions. I know I've definitely seen this in the past where people would say, I'm not going to do anything until God tells me exactly what to do. But sometimes God doesn't tell you exactly what you do. You have to start taking action, and then God will lead your steps. In Proverbs itself, it says, present your plans to the Lord. It means you need to have plans. It means you need to have an idea of what you would like to do. Doesn't mean that's what's actually going to happen, because God might change your direction as you go through it. He might shape the plan you've made in a sort of different way, but it does mean that there is a little bit of action that is required on our end. But even so, it should always be a collaboration with God. It shouldn't be one-sided on your side or one-sided on God's side. You should be working together with God to make a plan that aligns with His will for your life, and that is purposeful and fulfilling to you, and that makes sense to the gift that He's placed in your life. So even when you get to the point of the journey where you start being excited because you start seeing the vision a bit clearer, just remember that that excitement is good, that motivation is good, but remember to keep God in the lead, because He's the one that knows where He's taking you. And I think overall, one of the most important things to remember in this journey of finding our gift, finding our talents, building a purposeful life, a fulfilled life, discovering what God's plan for our life is, what God's purpose for our life is, the most important thing probably is remembering that the process and the journey is as important as the final outcome. Because we live in a society nowadays where we expect everything to happen here and then. We want everything immediately, but with God, that's not how it works. He has a process for everything. And everything you go with God, you probably are going to go through a journey, because He uses the journey to work on us. He uses the journey to work on our character, our mindset, our attitudes, our limiting beliefs. And we need that journey, because we are never going to be able to be the person we need to be for the result if we don't allow God to work on us in the meantime. And this is something that is illustrated very well in many stories in the Bible. I'm thinking about Joseph specifically. At the beginning of his journey, he was shown the final vision, but he had to go through a whole lot before he actually got there. And if God had told him that that's what he had to go through, maybe he wouldn't have wanted to embark on that journey. But the reality is, he needed that journey to become the person who then could be the vice pharaoh of Egypt. Even though the potential to become that was already within him from the beginning of his journey, he needed the process, he needed the journey to unlock that potential, to grow as a person, to grow in wisdom, to grow in discernment, to shape his character. And so the same is for us, really. So if you are on this journey and maybe you're losing a bit your patience, or you're starting to get tired of not having a clear idea of what you're doing and just feeling like you're never really getting there, I guess I just want to encourage you to not give up, because yes, the journey sometimes it's long and sometimes it's hard, and it can be a bit frustrating when it feels like you're going in circles. But remind yourself that even though it might feel like you're making no progress, you probably are making progress. It's that core progress that is inside of you, the growth you're making in your character, in your mindset, in your attitude. That might not be obvious from the beginning, but after a while you're gonna look back and realize how much you've grown in the process. And when you're at that point, you're probably gonna start having a clearer vision. I know for me, one of the biggest challenges has been the fact that I had to go through a lot of trial and error. I am a planner and a perfectionist. I like things to be laid out exactly how they should be, and then just get them done how they should be done, and basically follow a straightforward path. But the reality is that in life and with God, it's not like that. And a lot of times we need to go through trial and error. We need to let Him work on us. We need to make mistakes to realize what works and what doesn't, and always be open to letting Him lead and letting Him work on us and our vision in the meantime, because that's the only way we can really be ready to progress to the next level, unlock the next level. So these are some of the highlights of the things that I've learned in the last 5 years in my personal growth journey. I really hope you find these useful. And if there's any more that you have learned in your personal journey, please feel free to share them in the comments below. I'm always interested in learning about other people's experiences. And if you're just embarking on this journey, or if you are at the beginning, well, know that it does take time, but it is definitely worth the wait. The journey is definitely worth it. And if you want to find out more about how to discover your gift, or how to even have the confidence to start looking for it, to start building it in your life, make sure to stay tuned for the next episodes. I'll see you soon.